Hi everyone. In this recording, I'm going to do a brief overview of paper 2 of the Edexcel English language paper, and I'm going to also quickly go through how to answer question 1 and 2. And then please see my other videos for the other questions on paper 2 and for paper 1. So for this paper, we're going to be looking at June 2017. And there's a link below if you want to download the paper to go through it yourself. Okay, so let's go and quickly get through the overview to start with. So this paper differs from paper 2 because there are two texts. Okay, now what I'm going to say now refers to the November 2018 resit, and it will change slightly in the for the June 2019 exam, and I'll update the video for that. But at the moment, because those of you who are watching this are probably going for the November resit, this information is correct. It's going to change slightly in June, but nothing too significantly. Okay, so there's two texts, and so there's a lot more really to do in not that much more time than paper 1. So there is a lot more sort of pressure on your time in this paper. There are 7 reading questions, which you should take about an hour and 15 minutes over, and then there's 1 writing question, which you should aim to spend about 45 minutes on. Now, because 25% of your marks for the whole GCSE are on the writing, you really must make sure that you leave time for it. So therefore, I would suggest that this is the way that you should organise your time. So I reckon you should do questions 1 to 3, which are based on text 1 for the first 25 to 30 minutes. So that's reading the text and answering those first 3 questions. Then you should spend the next 25 to 30 minutes looking at text 2 and the 3 questions based on that, which are 4, 5 and 6. So both of these, you get 2 little questions and 1 big question. Okay, then I think what you should do is do the writing. Okay, so choose either question 8 or 9 and do the writing. Some people even do the writing before the reading section, which is also an option. However, if you struggle to get ideas and vocabulary, etc., it's a good idea to do it after the reading because it's often based on a similar theme and you can kind of steal some ideas from it. And then I would suggest that you have an attempt at question 7A and B. Do not just leave these questions. You must have a go at them because examiners very, very rarely give 0 marks. And also, as you'll see in my further videos, there's a lot of really cunning techniques where you can guarantee yourself to get a decent amount of marks on those 2 questions. But I would do those last, in the last 15 to 20 minutes. Okay, so let's have a look now at the paper then. So the first thing to do is for the first text, which you're aiming to spend 25 to 30 minutes. So read the questions quickly before you read the text. Okay, so you've got an idea of what you're looking out for when you're reading the text. Okay, so you quickly look through. So we've got here from lines 1 to 5, identify 2 reasons why Natasha sleeps in her socks. And find 1 example from 5 to 9 of how the writer uses language to show the lack of space. And then it's the language and structure question. So we're looking for language and structure. Okay, so that's true on all papers, and often it's this to interest and engage the readers on this paper too, but it might change, so just be careful to check, is it interest and engage the readers? So that kind of really means just pick any interesting language and structure because you're probably the reader, although we'll come to that in a minute. Are you the intended reader or not? We have to be careful with that one sometimes. Okay, so next what you need to do is to have a look at the context bit at the top of the text. So some people skip over this. I myself often do this. I forget like to read the headings and stuff, but it is actually really important because you can get a lot of clues about the answers from this. So this is an extract from Grey is the Colour of Hope, a memoir written in 1988 by Russian writer and poet Irina Ratushinkaya. I probably pronounced that completely wrong. The memoir covers her arrest, details of her time in a Russian strict regime camp and her release in 1986. She was arrested and imprisoned for writing what was considered to be anti-Soviet poetry. In this edited extract of the camp officer, Podest is checking the prisoner's possessions in the zone. Okay, so what you need to have a think about is what is the purpose, audience, and the form. So the purpose, it's a memoir, isn't it? So the purpose is to record her memories. It's kind of like an autobiography. And that also links to the form, yeah? So she's wanting the people who are reading it to understand what it was like to, what her life was like, yeah? So the format's this autobiography, this memoir. The purpose is for us to understand what her life was like. And the audience, okay, so it doesn't seem to imply a specific audience, does it? It's obviously people going to be reading after 1988, so it's a fairly modern audience. It's not specific, so what you need to do is be really careful here. If this happens to be a letter, which it had been on some of the sample materials for this specification, don't assume that the reader is just you because you are reading it. Because if somebody wrote a letter, the letter was intended for that person they wrote it to. Okay, it wasn't intended to be read by you. It just happens to be read by you now. So you need to think about who the writer thought was going to be reading it. However, in this case, it's safe to say that she wrote it for anybody coming after her to understand what it was like to be her. So it's kind of quite a general audience. Okay, well, that's going to help when we answer question 3 about to interest and engage the reader, isn't it? To have that clear idea of who the reader is. So in this case, it can be you. Okay, so let's quickly show how to answer question 1. From lines 1 to 5, identify 2 reasons why Natasha sleeps in her socks. Okay, so you just mark out 1 to 5 on your text. So I'll just show you quickly what that would look like. So if you've actually got the text in front of you, so I've just copied out the extract here, but okay, here we are. So what you'd need to do here is to make sure that you look at the correct line numbers and just mark them out. So you've got lines 1 to 5 here. Okay, so just make sure that you mark, so either highlight or box off those ones. Okay, so that's the way to make sure you don't accidentally lose the wrong lines. So just pause it now to have a read through and then highlight or underline 2 reasons why she sleeps in her socks. Okay, so the answer is she's particularly sensitive to the cold and she's running a constant temperature. Okay, so all you do is just write those in the space provided on the exam paper. So if we flick forward to that, here you go, you just write she's sensitive to the cold and she's running a temperature, and then you've got the answers there. Okay, so if we go to the next one, the next question is give one example from lines 5 to 9 of how the writer uses language to show the lack of space. And here you need to first of all give the example and then explain how the writer uses language. Okay, so this is lines 5 to 9. So if we go back to the text, this time we need to look at lines 5 to 9. So these lines underneath here. Okay, so all the way to here. Okay, so again, have a look there, see if you can decide. Oh, let's change it to a different colour. So have a look and see if you can find anything that shows a lack of space. Okay, so let's have a look at some possible answers to this. So one example might be, it was a tight squeeze. Okay, the word tight represents the area being crammed and perhaps really uncomfortable, small. Okay, so if you noticed, they didn't actually have to say it's tight is an adjective. Okay, saying the word is enough. It's the explanation showing that it's uncomfortable or small. Okay, and we just here's some examples from the mark scheme of other possible answers. So you can have a look at these and see that you don't have to use really technical language, but what you do need to do is to make sure that you do an explanation. So for example here, you don't have to say adjectives, you could just say words, but show that it shows the size. Yeah, so what they're looking for is a specific example, not a whole sentence, and then a good explanation. Okay, so that is the overview and how to answer question 1 and 2. Now look for question 3 and the rest of the questions for paper 2 in my other recordings. Okay, thank you, bye.